Ayrton Senna, Silverstone, British Grand Prix, 1989. That was my first year at LAT, so I was technically still the darkroom scumbag. And with the whole LAT crew, go up to Silverstone for the race, and there weren't many corners at Silverstone, or not so many back then. And Stephen T would probably go to the best corner, and the corners are sort of handed down, and then it's like, oh, where should we send TooTall? And it's like, well, no one's at Becketts, so I went to Becketts, not expecting too much to happen, and I think it was on lap 12. I think Senna was leading from Prost, and he just lost it on his own and spun into the gravel trap, and obviously. This is my first British Grand Prix for LAT. I couldn't quite believe that it was happening, to be honest. And he climbed out and he sort of sat on the sleepers for a while. And he looks a little bit, when he went off in Monaco at Portier, wasn't it?
When he was leading by 50 seconds.
The look on his face in that picture's. It's a little bit reminiscent of the look on his face when Prost goes past him at Portier and he kind of looks across. He's struggling to cope with it, isn't he? And he's made a mistake and he's handed victory to Prost, which is, I think, exactly what he did on that day as well. I was quite close to him, shaking, as I'm taking the picture, but he probably wasn't particularly grateful to have me there doing that. But it was quite a big moment, he had a real presence about him.
You referred to yourself as TooTall then, Charles. What's that all about?
Yeah, I just do it sort of naturally, really, because people very rarely call me Charles. Only my mother, really.
I'm trying to be polite here. I'm happy to call you Charles.
Yeah, no, I honestly don't mind what I'm called, because I've been called lots of things. But TooTall is... I used to think I was 6'7", but I think I'm shrinking a bit with age, so I'm 6'6" now, I think. But when I first went to LAT, I walked into Motoring News, and one of the journalists sort of said, "Oh, you're just too tall," and it sort of it stuck really, and so it's often abbreviated to Toots or TT or So I just I almost think of myself as TooTall, really.
Well, I'm sure it's an advantage as a photographer.
It can be. Yeah. It can be. It's good. It's good in the bun fights for the lofty angles.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lovely shot of Michael at home at Monaco. I say home. I mean, he was just so good there. And coming down the hill past the old tip top.
Yeah, it's very Monaco, isn't it? It's very colourful. It's kind of like a happy picture. The Ferraris had just finished one. That's 1999, so they just finished 1-2. Nice sunny afternoon. The thing I like about Monaco is that picture could almost be Jody Scheckter and Gilles Villeneuve, or it could be Jackie Stewart and Emerson Fittipaldi. It's timeless. And when you're standing trackside there, or at Casino Square, you kind of think everybody has come on this bit of track. Everybody's driven this bit of track in front of me, and I get a real feel of the history of the sport at Monaco, just because it's kind of like, fundamentally hasn't really changed. When you're at Monaco, it's just, you're at Casino Square, or the last corner, the Anthony Nodes corner, is probably my favourite place on any track to stand. And even if I didn't have a camera, you are the apex of the corner, basically, and as they come in, they're looking right at you, and you have to make sure that your camera straps aren't hanging, otherwise they'd literally rip your head off. And at the end of the session, your whole body is shaking, from the noise, and it's brilliant. We're quite privileged to be able to see that, and to feel it. You are the apex, and they come right past you, and all the bits come off the car, and even the modern day cars quite often have got get a bit sideways, or have got a drift on, and you've got to be careful. There's the Armco, and then there's the edge of the curb, and there's a gap between the two of them, and I'm always very conscious not to put my foot over the edge of the curb, so on the edge of the road, because if someone hit the Armco and it buckled, it would literally chop your foot off, so it's quite exciting. Yeah, British Grand Prix in 99, so not long after the Monaco, is it? And down at Stowe Corner, again, quite an unfashionable sort of place to do a start shot, but I quite like it. That's a bit timeless as well, you know, coming down the Hangar Straight still looks pretty similar, and they kind of went past me and I saw someone had gone off, but all I could see was dust, and as the dust cleared I could see the red. I thought, oh, this could be quite big, it's a Ferrari. And then when it completely cleared, I thought, oh, it's Schumacher. And it's actually the biggest newsworthy and the biggest picture that I've ever taken, I would say. You know, I can remember on the Monday morning sitting on the sofa watching the breakfast news and, you know, having a cup of tea, and they were reviewing the morning papers, and they were saying, oh, the Times has led with this picture of Michael and I'm kind of I'm sitting there eating my toast thinking, crack, it's my picture, you know. And then every picture, every paper had this picture. So yeah, because, you know, you get a lot of pictures in autosport and F1 racing and front covers, but to get it in the, you know, the daily papers and the broadsheets is it's a different thing, to be honest. It's very satisfying. So I was straight down to the newsagent to buy a few copies. This is nice. Schumacher and Hill. Again, it's not the most spectacular picture, but it's quite a big picture from that year. The fact that it's the two championship rivals banging wheels at that's 95 top chicane, Lecombe at Spa. And it was just quite a big race that year, wasn't it? Because Schumacher started 16th and Hill started 8th. And they had different strategies. I mean, in that picture, Schumacher's on slicks and Hill's on wets. And it was a bit controversial. Schuey's tactics were a little bit sceptical, I think, at times. Did he get a penalty, a ban or something after that? So he won. Schumacher won the race. But it was kind of like one of the moments of the year when the two of them came together, you know, and that was my first year as well. So yeah, I wanted to include one of Mika Hakkinen just because if I had to pick my favourite driver, probably favourite Formula One, it would be Mika. Apart from Mark Webber, obviously, who's the nicest guy. But Hakkinen's just a proper Grand Prix driver, you know, incredibly quick, and one of the few drivers that kind of came back after a life-threatening accident and was still as quick as he was before, and probably maybe a bit wiser as well. And I was very happy to see him win a couple of world championships. I think he was very, very deserved. He was my Formula 3 champion when I was coming up.
Oh, really?
Through the ranks. So in 1990, he drove for West Surrey, and he won the championship then. So I got to know him a little bit then, and then, you know, it was nice to see him in Formula 1. And another one of I did a job with him in Monaco, actually, where he was interviewing Prince Albert in the palace. This is another one of my favourite assignments. And I went round to his apartment, and I was a bit early, and he sort of said, what do you want to do? Do you want to drive the Grand Prix track? So I said, yeah, all right. So we went round in his little Mercedes. We drove this wasn't at Grand Prix time, it was in normal times, and we drove there, and people were banging on the windows, you know, and it was all quite fun. And then we went up to the palace, and the idea of the interview was, I think is it Peter Dron, the journalist?
Yes.
He had
good driver too.
Done a load of, is he? Yeah. He'd done a load of questions that Mika was going to ask Prince Albert, and we went into his office, and it was really, really untidy and claustrophobic. I think there was a bobsleigh on the wall, and there's books and plants everywhere, and there was barely room to take any pictures, to be honest. But they sat on this little sofa and started doing the questions, and I decided that there was a tree in the way, but I thought I could maybe get a shot from where this tree was, and as I was kind of coming out of the tree to take a picture of them, Mika asked the question to Prince. He said, How do you find the press intrusive, and how do you cope with it? And literally at that point, I came up out of the leaves with my camera, and I heard the question, and I kind of just went, and then just kind of melted away. They laughed. It was quite fun. But that was a nice job to do.
Tell me, did Mika know you as TooTall?
Yeah, he would have done, because everybody in that's kind of what I was called. But when we were waiting to go into the palace, I'd seen him at the race previously, and he was sitting in the cockpit of the McLaren with his knees kind of sticking up. Mm-hmm. And I said, I took a picture of it, and I kind of said to him, I was quite surprised that you were able to sit like that in a Formula One cockpit. There's obviously a lot more room than there looks. I said, maybe I'd have been all right after all, and I could have been a Formula One driver. And he said, no, Toots. He said, you need balls. So.
Classic Mika.
You have 1,000 eyes that never fall asleep.